Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into one of the absolute biggest biological mysteries out there. We're going to decode how tumors actually grow, adapt, and, crucially, how they manage to evade our immune system so effectively. If you've ever wondered how a seemingly normal cell transforms into a relentless disease, well, we are going to figure this out together. We're doing this by exploring a really foundational scientific framework known as the Hallmarks of Cancer, which maps out everything from genetic mutations all the way to the tumor microenvironment.
Right off the bat, I want you to think about this fundamental question. What makes a cancer cell just so incredibly resilient? For the longest time, it was super easy to look at cancer as just a random glitch, right? A simple biological mistake. But to truly understand it, we've got to shift our perspective. Cancer isn't just a localized error. It's a highly complex, deeply evolved biological system. It actively recruits help, it rewrites its own genetic code, and it literally builds entirely new protective ecosystems right around itself.
All right, so what exactly is this framework we're talking about? The hallmarks of cancer basically refers to the distinctive functional capabilities, enabling traits, and systemic interactions that dictate how tumors develop and evolve. I know, it sounds a bit dense. But honestly, just think of it as the ultimate biological rulebook. Researchers use these very principles to make sense of the disease, breaking down its overwhelming, chaotic complexity into a set of distinct, logical patterns that we can actually follow and understand.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, dimensions of cancer. Second, cancer's functional capabilities. Third, enabling phenotypic characteristics. Fourth, the tumor microenvironment. And finally, our conclusion.
Starting with Section 1, Dimensions of Cancer, a four-part biological framework.
Notice how these four conceptual dimensions of cancer biology elegantly map out and intersect. You've got the functional capabilities. Those are the specific survival traits a cancer cell actually acquires. Then the enabling phenotypic characteristics, which are the underlying biological conditions that allow those traits to develop in the first place. You also have the hallmark-conveying cells of the tumor microenvironment. Basically, these are the other, completely normal cells the cancer recruits to its side. And finally, systemic interactions with the entire body. They all interlock perfectly. The wild thing is, you really can't have cancer without all four of these dimensions working together to sustain it.
Moving into Section 2, Cancer's Functional Capabilities, or the rogue cell's superpowers.
It turns out, cancer cells collect 9 discrete functional capabilities over time, and they don't necessarily acquire them in a strict linear order. It's more like they accumulate them like a biological Swiss Army knife as they evolve. Some cells might learn to induce vasculature, which basically means they figure out how to build their own blood supply. Others figure out how to resist programmed cell death, essentially rendering themselves immortal. It's this continuous, deeply fascinating process of a cell just constantly upgrading its own survival toolkit.
Let's actually break down a few of these core capabilities, because they're incredible. First up, sustaining proliferative signaling. Normal cells are polite, right? They only grow when they're specifically told to. But cancer cells, they totally bypass that. For instance, a genetic mutation in the KRAS oncogene essentially jams the cell's accelerator pedal to the floor, driving this constant chronic proliferation. At the same time, they inactivate growth suppressors. The TP53 gene normally acts as the cell's brakes, but when it mutates, those brakes are entirely cut. Then they figure out how to evade immune destruction, literally hiding from the body's natural defenses. And perhaps most mind-blowing of all, they unlock phenotypic plasticity, meaning they can change their cellular identity on the fly to adapt to stress, which is exactly what eventually allows them to activate invasion and metastasize to other parts of the body.
Now, to put this all into perspective, you really have to grasp the sheer scale of the genetics here. 750. Over 750 different genes have been mutationally altered and validated as oncogenes or tumor suppressors in human cancers. We're not just talking about discovering 1 or 2 rogue genes anymore. We are looking at a massive, interconnected network of over 750 genetic levers that cancer can pull to acquire all of those hallmarks we just discussed.
Which brings us to Section 3, Enabling Phenotypic Characteristics, or how tumors acquire their powers.
So these are the enablers. They don't necessarily cause the cancer to grow all on their own, but they act like the biological engines driving that evolution. Take tumor-promoting inflammation, for example. Cancer actually manipulates the immune system's inflammatory response to supply itself with growth factors and survival molecules. Another enabler is the polymorphic microbiome. Yep, it turns out the natural bacteria living in our bodies can actually be co-opted to help tumors grow. These aberrant traits create the absolute perfect, chaotic environment for cancer to thrive.
The two absolute biggest engines of all this chaos are loss of genomic integrity and non-mutational epigenetic reprogramming. So, think of genomic integrity as the hardware of the cell. Cancer actively destabilizes this hardware, causing rampant mutational changes to the DNA itself, like those KRAS and TP53 genetic mutations we mentioned a minute ago. But epigenetic reprogramming, that's the software. Cancer has literally figured out how to alter the way genes are expressed, turning bad genes on and good genes off entirely without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Both of these mechanisms are just remarkably successful at completely corrupting the cell's normal programming.
Section 4. The Tumor Microenvironment, otherwise known as the corrupted ecosystem.
There's this brilliantly vivid analogy from our source text to describe the normal cells trapped inside a tumor. It calls them accessories to the crime. I mean, how spot on is that? It makes you realize that a tumor is absolutely not just an isolated lump of mutant cancer cells. It relies heavily on a recruited, basically brainwashed army of hijacked normal cells just to survive and expand.
When you look at this cellular ecosystem, you've got the cancer cells in the center, sure, but look at everything else swirling around them. You have immune cells, fibroblasts, blood vessels, even nerve projections. The tumor has actively recruited these normal, healthy cells and reprogrammed them to do its bidding. When you really stare at this microenvironment, it dawns on you that a tumor isn't just a mass of rogue tissue. It is functioning like a highly corrupted outlaw organ.
Let's look at the specific accomplices here. First up, cancer-associated fibroblasts, or CAFs. Normally, fibroblasts are the good guys. They heal wounds. But here, they're corrupted to structurally and chemically support tumor growth. Then we have endothelial cells, which are hijacked to literally build new blood vessels, giving the tumor its own private nutrient supply line. Macrophages, which are supposed to be the immune system's fierce attack dogs, are reprogrammed to actually shield the tumor from other immune cells. And senescent cells, these are aging cells that have supposedly stopped dividing, but they're manipulated into secreting biochemical factors that aid the cancer's progression. Honestly, it is staggering to learn how cancer so completely subverts our body's own defenders.
And finally, Section 5. Conclusion: Unmasking the ecosystem.
If there is just one thing you take away from this entire explainer, let it be this core framework. Cancer biology relies on a three-pronged attack. It has the superpowers, the acquired functional capabilities like chronic proliferation. It has the enablers, the unstable genetic and epigenetic mechanisms that make these mutations possible in the first place. And it has the accomplices, an entire microenvironment of normal cells hijacked to feed and protect it. We can no longer look at cancer as just a single cellular defect. We have to view it as a fully functioning, highly adaptive, rogue ecosystem.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound question for the future of medicine. If a tumor is this complex ecosystem, are we finally learning how to collapse it by targeting not just the cancer cells, but the enablers and accomplices too? Well, the latest targeted therapies and immunotherapies are trying to do exactly that. If you found learning about the hallmarks of cancer as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and visit our website for way more deep dives into complex biology. Thanks for learning with us today.